The day was filled with so many events that it was actually hard to choose what to talk about today. I will definitely talk about the confession of the person, about planting bombs in the headquarters near the Democratic Republican Party headquarters, but I'll start with the billion stolen in Minneapolis. They're already writing that it wasn't a billion that was stolen, but 8 billion. This is, of course, an unbelievably stupid and vile story on the part of the authorities. It's a good lesson for those who shout, "The government will solve everything. The government is wise." I 100% trust our government, the elected scoundrels, and the managers of our common property. At the end, there will be a short vignette about 6 members of Congress who called on our servicemen not to obey the orders of the commander-in-chief. And now on to the guide to stealing. If you were told that as long as there is a homelessness problem in your city, you would receive $100 million a year, and your task, as explained to you, is to eliminate this problem, don't you see anything fishy about this offer? No, as long as the problem exists, you receive a huge amount of money. As soon as the problem disappears, the money disappears too. Where will your motivation be directed? To solve the problem or to keep it until you retire? But on the other hand, the assignment, the task given, is to solve this problem. So the public good brings you, or rather takes away from you, 100 million, meaning there will be a benefit, but they will take 100 million from you. What do you think 99% of humanity will do? Notice I didn't say 100% because there might accidentally be someone who, well, in any case, either he's such a naive angel of God, but if he really were like that, no one would have appointed him to the position of boss. That's right, where you need to share with your higher-up boss, not just sit there clueless. So, not you, of course not you, you're good. But so that everyone else does what they usually do in this situation. They achieve victories and accomplishments, but in such a way that, God forbid, the problem doesn't go away, and they shout about their achievements at every corner.
Governor Gavin Newsom announces that new data shows a decrease in homelessness in California.
So that's what it is. They printed some numbers on a piece of paper and pretend to be very, very happy about these numbers. They really like them. So not only are they stealing, but they're also setting things up for themselves. Congratulations with congratulations and successes with gifts. And what have they succeeded in? They've succeeded in stealing, of course. They've even come up with a name for it. Homelessness. The homeless industrial complex.
This case shows how the homelessness industry has turned into a money laundering scheme, where connected politicians and non-governmental organization leaders get rich while the problem they're supposedly solving just keeps getting worse and worse. Let me tell you about systematic fraud at the Vanguard Center, one of the most well-known homeless service providers in Los Angeles. According to federal data, this non-profit organization received over, just imagine, 100 million in taxpayer funds despite significant non-compliance with federal audit requirements.
For years, I specifically said 100 million a year, referring specifically to this center. But to be clear, California spent somewhere between $6 and $8 billion, and that's just in 2023 alone. Since 2019, to this day, since this program was organized, the state has thrown $30 billion into this stinking hole. According to the authorities, there are 187,000 homeless people in California, and it's unclear whether this includes illegal immigrants or not. So, over 5 years, that's $160,000 spent on each homeless person. The number of homeless people in 2019 was 151,000. And after 5 years, it became 187,000. So after spending $160,000 per homeless person, the officials increased the number of people in need by 36,000. More homeless people means more money. Fewer homeless people means less money. For the $160,000 spent, they could have bought each homeless person a mobile home and placed them in special parks. We have plenty of those. If you move farther from Los Angeles, not in San Francisco, San Diego, or LA, you can find a small apartment. Now, not a mobile home, but a small apartment for that amount. Well, let's say Riverside or San Bernardino are quite nice places to live. A lot of people live there and don't think anything bad about it. But as soon as you do that, you'll solve the homeless problem and kill the golden goose. The continuation, as always, is up to us. They take money for good causes, and since we're suckers, they don't solve the problem. They make it worse, as I just showed you. But that's just the homeless. Peanuts, ladies and gentlemen. Here is the poverty reduction program from 1964. Lyndon Johnson's program has cost us about $25 trillion since 1964. That's about 2/3 of our national debt. It's not even funny anymore. I don't even know. It's beyond a joke, in my opinion. Yeah. So 38 is 2/3 of the national debt for us. 38 trillion, slightly less than 2/3. So 1 trillion has been spent on this program every year for the past few years. In the early 70s, poverty meant being unable to provide your family with necessities, and it was 11 to 12% of the population. And today, now it's estimated at 10 to 11%. So, after spending $25 trillion, poverty has decreased by just 1%. Brilliant, hooray. If we spend another 250 trillion, maybe we'll get rid of poverty altogether. Just to be clear, we pay interest on our national debt. So that's also 1 trillion a year, and on the poor, whom we can't seem to lift out of poverty, we spend 1 trillion a year. In my opinion, we've gone crazy, or maybe we were never particularly smart. That's possible too, but if not, then how do we make so much that even after giving away trillions, we still have enough? And what an amazing life it would be in America if it weren't being plundered. Have the communo-fascist ranks grown now? Now listen to the Democrat with a conscience, Bill Maher, Bernie.
Sanders has always wanted to introduce single-payer health care for our 340 million strong country, but when liberal hippie Vermont tried to do it for its 626,000 residents, it collapsed. Just like that poor Oval Office last week, Bernie Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Mamdani and the others aren't Democrats. They'll be the first to tell you that themselves. They're democratic socialists, and that's a whole different thing.
If you've ever wondered what happens when the Democratic Party starts flirting too much with socialism, buckle up, because today's story is exactly that moment when your friends tell you not to text your ex, and you do it anyway. Bill Maher has once again gone after Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Bernie Sanders, and Zoran Mamdani, and this time he's not just annoyed, he's staging a full-blown political intervention.
I know kids think that anything that happened before they showed up on the planet didn't really happen, but it did. We've run this experiment many times, and the results are very clear, and the results are always obvious. Here's capitalist South Korea at night from space, and here's socialist North Korea. In 1900, Venezuela was richer than Poland, but then Poland, after freeing itself from its Soviet past, fully switched to capitalism. And now its economy is as large as Japan's, and people there have high salaries, low inflation, cars, and vacations at home. Meanwhile, Venezuela replaced capitalism with Hugo Chávez's 21st century socialism, which proved to be the same as past versions of socialism. A mess.
What I told you about the programs to fight homelessness and poverty is just a small rehearsal. The tragedies that happen to countries that start building socialism.
This turned one of the richest countries in Latin America into one of the poorest. Low pay, inflation, shortages, disruptions, 8 million refugees. If you think New York can reinvent this wheel, you're in for a rude awakening.
Maher constantly reminds people that Bernie, Ausi, and Mamdani are not actually Democrats, they're democratic socialists, a completely different category, and they proudly admit it. Most voters don't understand the difference. But Maher's main joke is that the same politicians who speak out against capitalism are famous because capitalism exists.
Democratic socialism is like a dating profile. It looks good until you see it in person.
These elections are taking place at a time when we have an administration in Washington that is leading us closer to an authoritarian society every day. This is America.
Let our words be so loud tonight that Andrew Cuomo hears them in his apartment. For $8,000 a month, New York is not for sale.
And what does it mean that New York is not for sale? How is he planning to buy it? By the way, judging by the number of homeowners fleeing, leaving New York, and rushing to sell their properties, New York is actually up for sale, but the problem is that there are no buyers. So, gentlemen, the best way to rob the population, first establish democracy. It's such a nice name for what is actually the dictatorship of the majority. Then second, find a group that envies the minority. So, well, something like those who want to have what the minority owns, so they could have it too. By the way, 49% is still a minority, and the smaller they are, the easier it is to turn the majority against them. So they are the majority, and the dictatorship of the majority is democracy. Democracy is the dictatorship of the majority. Gentlemen, make no mistake, 51% vote and 49% are obliged to follow. That's called a dictatorship of the majority. So the idea is to find such a group, identify those who are envious and hateful, and then turn them into the majority. And now they will vote for anything to take away from those who have and give it to themselves. And then after that, come up with a program that touches the hearts of the entire population so much that people give their money, believing it's noble and necessary. For example, protecting young girls from religious obscurantism. For example, it doesn't really matter. The main thing is that it touches people. Saving turtles in the Indian Ocean could also move them, or maybe sex education. Komarov, that's an interesting topic. They've done this with fish, but not yet with mosquitoes. I'm not joking, it's already been done with fish. So the next step is to start a massive advertising campaign explaining the necessity, urgency, and importance of donating to this program. Because without this program, well, and then, so to speak, artificial intelligence will tell you what can't be done without this program. And fifth, fight with all your might for sex education. Komarov. And keep fighting until retirement, of course, constantly proclaiming stunning victories that show we're on the right track, and we just need a little more money. As they say, we're either at the coffin lid or with a nail inside Ario Simulak follows. Remember the day when Make America Great Again supposedly attacked the Capitol? In the morning, they found 2 bombs, one at Democratic Party headquarters, the other at Republican headquarters. For 4 years, despite footage from nearby cameras, they couldn't find the perpetrator or the perpetrators. When the new management, Trump's people, naturally came to the FBI, they found thousands of pages, reports, and video details that hadn't been organized. The folders with the papers, they were fastened with those, what are they called? Those clips. And they were bent to make it harder to turn the pages. Ladies and gentlemen, so They went through all those folders. Nothing was scanned. Nothing was entered into the computer. Nothing was digitized. And basically, they found almost nothing. That is, they collected a huge amount of material over 4 years, and none of it was connected or found to be anything. There was a feeling that for some reason the FBI wasn't untangling the case, but rather making it more confusing, which is, well, strange, yeah? The new team started to sort things out and investigate, and the first conclusions came from a female police officer who later went to work for the CIA. According to the documents and paperwork, it seemed that she was the one who brought those 2 bombs. They didn't explode, but they distracted the police from the Capitol. So the documents even mention that she had surgery on her leg, which caused a very noticeable limp, and there it is, the limp, and so on. The case had already moved to the next stage, meaning the investigator was working with the prosecutor, and it started to make its way into the press as new and, for some reason, previously carefully hidden details became known. The FBI analysis, for example, concluded that it was not a woman at either location, but a man. So the FBI began to consider a completely different scenario.
Brian Cole Jr., whom the FBI calls the organizer of the homemade bombs at the headquarters of the Democratic and Republican parties the day before January 6, 2021. He appeared before a judge today for the first time in the federal court of the District of Columbia. What's behind us? That was pretty quick. He basically listened as the judge read out the charges against him, which are very serious. Having an explosive device? He faces up to 20 years in prison, the judge said, if he is ultimately found guilty. An interesting fact from the courtroom. Prosecutors say he spent about 4 hours answering questions and cooperating with FBI agents after his arrest. Cole's family was also in court on Thursday. They shouted, "We love you," after everything was said and done. We haven't independently confirmed the motive, but the Associated Press says he confessed to being the person. It also reports that he was a supporter of President Trump back in 2020 and believed that the election was stolen, which is what almost everyone who came to the Capitol on January 6th said motivated them. That would have been the day before, obviously, but perhaps driven by the same belief. Now he has to appear in court on December 15th.
The press immediately reported that Brian Cole planted the bombs to get revenge for Trump, whom he supported in 2020. The continuation, something doesn't add up for me. So Biden's FBI is hiding Cole's involvement, not giving any information about him, and covering for him. And from their point of view, he's just as much of a criminal as those who attacked Congress. So, well, just like the Baltic sailors in 1917 went to the Winter Palace, something there smells, feels different than the truth.
Hey folks, it's Benny. We've just gone from strange to even stranger, as the man who planted homemade bombs confessed to federal authorities that he did indeed place those explosive devices on January 6th. So now we not only have a full confession, but also a motive. He says he's a Trump supporter, that he was very angry about all these elections, and that he was trying to get revenge or something like that. But that's just crazy. Let's start from the beginning. What should we believe now? That this young black man, who as far as we know has absolutely no connection to President Trump or the Make America Great Again movement, a man who has almost no digital footprint, was completely radicalized. Although his family, for whom he works at a bail bond company that issues bonds to criminal foreigners, his family has repeatedly sued the Trump administration and then the Biden administration for racism, which, as you understand, is obviously permeated with leftist ideology, activism for social and racial justice. That this person, this so-called lone wolf, was so angry and upset about the results of the 2020 election that he was making bombs, but then he started buying bomb parts many years before he set them up. What is this? What's happening?
See, I'm not the only one who has the same question. He was so offended for Trump that he made not knowing how, 2 bombs and planted them on that very day and at just the right time when others like him went and he didn't know about it. So, in advance, naturally, they stormed Capitol Hill without weapons and walked around the Congress a bit and then went home without breaking or damaging anything. They didn't even write Vasya was here or Masha plus Pasha anywhere equals pregnancy. They just wandered around and left. Criminals. How annoying, right?
Good morning, Anna. My colleague Carol Lanigan and I learned from several sources that this suspect has basically confessed to planting the bombs. And he told FBI agents that he is a supporter of Donald Trump. But they also gathered evidence that he has anarchist tendencies, and they say that's the motive here. The reasons for this act are not entirely clear, and they are being cautious about drawing any conclusions from this information. Kapitolieski, they say he was found to have antisocial tendencies, and after all, he lived alone with his parents. Neighbors described him as quiet and shy, so a lot remains unclear, but the main thing is that he confessed. It looks like they solved this case after 5 long years of trying to gather evidence.
5 years of searching and working undercover. Editors, so now they've found it. Why didn't they find it before? And he came and said, yes, I did it, and I'm a supporter of Trump.
I'm not surprised, but if you look at the affidavit that was filed in court yesterday, they just had an overwhelming amount of evidence linking this person to the crime. Not only his purchase history, but also his phone, which was tracked by cell towers in that area at that very time. And the cherry on top was what they had. A license plate reader that was installed on one of the highways leading directly to the Capitol, and his license plate was recorded by that reader on that day as well. So usually when you're about to interrogate a suspect in a case, you present them with some evidence, not all of it, but part of the evidence you have. That often makes them think, they've got me, and I might as well confess. So I think when they presented all this to him, my guess is that he realized he was caught.
So what happens next? Now we need answers to all the other questions, to this whole cascade. We discussed this in quite some detail on air this morning. Did you find a lot of interesting things? This is someone who has been radicalized. This is someone who, as we've seen with the kidnapping, Gretchen Whitmer, as we've seen in other foiled federal plots, is someone who was used as a scapegoat to manipulate the news and political environment to attack Make America Great Again. I don't know. His family says the opposite. They can't believe this is happening. They're in shock. He wouldn't hurt a fly. He doesn't have a social life. He's on the spectrum. This is someone with no violent past or history. And, obviously you've got the wrong person. But when he confesses, everything becomes meaningless. So what we need to take away from all this, what we need here and what's essential is more information. And here's what we were promised after today's indictment. We were promised that there would be an avalanche of new information from the FBI, from the feds, from Den Bongen and Ketty Tsell, who both spoke on television last night. Listen, there will not only be a lot of new information about what's happening here, but you'll also see the failures of Biden's FBI in their attempt to find this person. Now, this kind of complicated everything because I thought it was going to be an extreme leftist. It was an extreme left-wing radical. Based on his family, background, and associates, it seemed clear to me he was a leftist trying to harm the Make America Great Again movement. Why would someone bomb their own movement if Make America Great Again supporters were set to march here the next day? Why did you do it? It doesn't make any sense. If you're such a staunch Trump supporter, why would you plant a bomb at the Republican National Committee? It doesn't make any sense. All of this is pointless right now. We need to wait for more information. Here's what Kesh and Dan said, at least yesterday, about what we're going to get.
Trace, you'll learn a lot more about it in the next 24 hours. Because his first court appearance will happen, he will be charged, and he will go through the official arraignment procedure. And as soon as that happens, we'll be able to tell the public more clearly about what we've discovered. But I'll remind the audience that this suspect was only 25 years old at the time of the alleged bombing incident. Not old at all, not someone with a long history in criminal justice. But I think we'll find out in the coming days, maybe even as soon as tomorrow. That's the amount of resources that need to be invested in this overall, without embellishing the evidence in this case. You need to go and buy pipes. You need to go and buy plugs. You need to go and buy sulfur. You need to go and buy wires. Next, determine how to assemble everything successfully. And remember, fortunately, these devices didn't work, but they could have worked. They were ready to explode. And it was a prevented disaster that fortunately saved the lives of hundreds of people around the United States Capitol. That's what we focused on as investigators and FBI agents who led and spoke out on this. Let's find out who is buying this, how they're using it, and how they're learning to do it. And I think you'll get more information about how, why, when, where, and about the planning in the coming days.
That is, you had to know what to buy. Then buy it, then put everything together, then buy, use it, then check. How to get to the chosen targets unnoticed. Dress in a way so that neither your hands nor your face are seen. Do all this and not tell anyone for 5 years about what he did.
Sean, I don't know what the hell that previous management team was doing, other than going after political opponents, using the FBI as a weapon, destroying its reputation, disgracing the agents who do a great job there, catching terrorists, spies, the CCP, and everyone else. They seem to be intentionally undermining faith in the institution, which is terrible. I don't know what they were doing, but I'll tell you what happened when the director and I arrived at my first meeting. I swore an oath, and just 15 minutes later, as those at the meeting know, I swore again. I said, when do I start? I need a full report on the bomber case on the very first day, and I looked at the agent on the case, having received a full report on what they did. And they did quite extensive work. They followed up, I think, on thousands of leads, more than 6,000 interviews. Hundreds of tips were followed up, and the case was still relatively cold. And I grabbed the agent on the way out and said, you'll get him for me. You'll track this guy down and find him. You'll get him for me. I want him. And that started an almost 9-month operation to make sure we could provide full accountability and transparency to the American public. And to find this guy, and today we did it. Today we did it.
Well, that was kind of a stupid call. According to neighbors and acquaintances, he was a reserved, quiet person, lived with his parents, liked to walk his dog around the neighborhood, never took part in demonstrations or marches, never posted anything on social media, and having no training. He carried out the operation in 2 places so that he couldn't be found for 5 years. And here's another odd thing. 4 years. The Democrats would love to catch a Trump supporter with bombs. That would be really great for them, so to speak, to help destroy Trump, and make America great again. And now let's think for ourselves a little bit. I claim that if Dan Bongino found it, then the Democrats could have found it too, and maybe they did during 4 years of searching. Maybe they found it and just didn't announce it. Like the terrible Trump man who tried to kill everyone who stood in the way of the monster Donald J. Trump. Logically, this shouldn't be a lone bomber. These bombs, whether they exploded or not, were supposed to draw significant police forces away from the Capitol steps. Who needed this? Why would anyone need this? Furthermore, the person who planted them had to know the exact day and hour to place them. Everything just matched up too perfectly. And third, he might have thought anything at all, that he was alone, that he supported Trump, while his whole family and all his friends were against Trump, and he was the only one fighting, which means getting angry for the first time in his life over political deception, he made bombs. By the way, he bought the materials a year before Trump was deceived, so he thought that Trump could be deceived, and that's why he was preparing. Wow. He bought the materials and learned how to assemble a bomb, And when Trump was deceived, he took 2 assembled bombs and went to plant them on the day of the demonstration. And why, if he was protesting against Trump being deceived, would he plant a bomb at the Republican Party? Again, it doesn't make sense. So now here's my version of the phobia. Maybe slow, I don't know. At some point, it caught him on the radar and started training him, maybe without him even realizing what was happening. Now you can even do it online. And when the time came, they pressed the button, told him when and where to go, where and how to plant the bombs, how to dress, how to walk so he wouldn't be recognized. Then and only then does it become clear why they couldn't find him. They couldn't find him because no one was looking for him. Those who needed to know where he was, what he was doing, how he was, and how to find him in a minute. So, to answer the question at the beginning of this segment about how to commit a crime and get away with it, the answer is this. Thank you. Be in the same team with the people who will be looking for you later. Then no one will ever find you, ever. They never found those who shot and killed John Fitzgerald Kennedy. To continue, because it seems that those who were searching were the very ones who gave the order to shoot. Remember, 6 members of Congress, all former military.
All these members of Congress released this video last week. It caused a lot of noise, and they were all invited to the Sunday show. We have clips from all of them, and none of them gave a consistent answer.
Everyone had their own talking point. They go to friendly media and get asked questions that should have been simple if they had thought about the outcome of this in advance.
Do you think President Trump ever issued any illegal orders?
As far as I know, I'm not aware of anything illegal, but there are definitely legal maneuvers going on with those Caribbean strikes and everything related to Venezuela.
She was a CIA analyst. That's the legal acrobatics department in the United States, and she's sitting here talking. It was such an urgent need that we put out this announcement so people would know the law, that they don't have to follow lawful orders. They gave themselves away. This shows that it was politically motivated to undermine the authority of the President of the United States as Commander-in-Chief.
What was it? And why? And now the veil of fog is beginning to lift. After their unexpected appearance, shields with texts about United States military bases, radio, and television suddenly appeared. Explanations were given that the editor could give an illegal order. This was written on the boards. This was said by corrupt announcers, our beloved corrupt announcers. Trump could give an illegal order. And all the threads led to one place. To one source. The continuation where the money was kept and what it was all about, ladies and gentlemen, will be in the next video.